Welcome to Your Body, the healthcast that takes a deep dive inside your health. No matter what kind of health issue you're experiencing, whether it's the common cold, a bad case of eczema, heart disease, or breast cancer, it affects you in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and internally. This podcast seeks to understand what is going on with our bodies from the inside out, from our heads to our toes, and everything else in between. We're going to look at health issues from every angle and hopefully get a better understanding of what's going on with our bodies and how we can better take care of them. I'm your host, Stephanie Landon, editorial manager at RadNet, a leader in outpatient imaging services and an advocate of patient empowerment for over 35 years.
Spam risk.
That's me.
You're a spam risk.
Is that what it said?
Spam risk. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know.
Sorry. I'm spamming you.
I think it's the first time I've ever answered a spam risk. So this is fun already.
I have been so excited to share this episode, my full interview with the amazing Dave Grohl. Originally, this was the third part of a series we did a few months back on orthopedic injuries. But just before we were set to release it, Taylor Hawkins, drummer for Foo Fighters and Dave's very dear friend, passed away. After that, I didn't feel right about going out with this episode. I've known Dave personally for 15, 16 years, and I felt kind of protective. I wanted to be sensitive in what was a really tragic time, so I held on to the interview. In the meantime, we released our last episode on HPV and the cancers it causes, and, some time has passed, and it seems like we can finally share my full conversation with Dave, which was pretty great. Again, this interview was part of a series of episodes on orthopedic injuries. So the main topic of our conversation is about when Dave broke his leg falling off of that stage during a concert in Sweden. I do remember when that happened, and I was around him shortly after. You'll hear us talk about this because I do remember him being kind of very uncharacteristically grumpy. But in this conversation, I actually learned a lot about his injury, what he endured during his recovery, and how Dave heals emotionally.
What the heck are we talking about?
So we're talking about bone injuries and that kind of thing. So
yeah. I had one of those once.
I know you did, and I really want to get into that.
I've had a few of those in my life.
Really?
I have. There was once when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I was a soccer player when I was a kid. And there was this little field near my house. I grew up in Virginia outside of D.C. There was this little field where the kids would get together and play soccer on the weekends. And one day in this game, I came running towards a ball to kick it. At the same time, another kid was coming from the opposite direction, running towards me to kick it as well. We kicked the ball at the same time, and my foot went in a direction it's not supposed to go in. And I kind of limped off to the side, and my first thought was, oh my God, I'm going to get to stay home from school. I was like, this is amazing. I just bought myself a day home from school. And so I walked the mile home. I walked all the way home and said to my mom, yeah, I think I broke my ankle. I'm not sure, but I probably shouldn't go to school tomorrow. She's like, no, I think you're fine, and we'll see tomorrow. I'm like, okay. Woke up the next morning. Ankle was like huge and purple, and I had actually broken it.
Oh.
And I was so psyched because I got to stay home from school for a few days. I really just chipped a bone, but I wound up, it was my first cast. And the funny thing is, when I broke my leg years later, 5 or 6 years ago, they saw that when they looked at the imaging. They said, oh. It looks like you had broken your ankle before. I was like, oh my God, that was when I was 10 years old. It was like 40 years ago or something like that. So, yeah, it happened.
That stuff stays with you, those bones.
Yeah.
You know.
Those bones.
But what about the pain, though? You were like psyched to stay home from school, but weren't you in pain?
Well, I have a really funny relationship with pain because I don't really feel it too much. It's weird.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Yeah, the big injuries that I've had in my life, whether they were car accidents or being hit in the head with a golf club when I was young, which required a lot of stitches, or breaking bones, I don't know if it's the adrenaline or what happens in my body, but there's some sort of neurological shutoff where if I realize an injury is severe, I just go into survival mode and I don't feel the pain.
Oh, that's interesting.
Of course, it comes later, but when it's going down, when it's really happening, I don't like writhe and cry and scream. I just sit there like, oh my God, I can't believe this has just happened. Oh, we gotta fix this right now. So, I've in any of my like bigger injuries, I've just kind of walked away from it like, no, I'll be fine. And then of course the next day I'm in the hospital. So.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the injury 4 or 5 years ago, the big one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, it was a little embarrassing. I fell off a stage. We were in Sweden in a city called Gothenburg, and it was a stadium show on a summer night. It was a beautiful, beautiful Swedish summer evening with a packed stadium, 50 or 60,000 people. And, of course, we were really excited to play this show. And I remember before the show, the promoter comes up and he says, last time Bruce Springsteen played here, he cracked the foundation of the stadium. So you have a lot to live up to. Oh. And I was like, whatever, no pressure, dude. I'm like, okay. And so it was kind of just like any other night on the road where we were backstage and we were having a couple drinks and we were excited to play. We got out on stage and played the first song. The audience went bananas. And it was still sunlight out because in Sweden the sun doesn't go down until very late in the summer. And those stadium stages are really tall and they're really wide. So if you're going to like go run over to one side of the stage and rip a tasty lead for the people over there, it's like a 50-yard dash, okay? So you're just running back and forth. I mean, God bless Mick Jagger. This guy can still do it. Like running back and forth. And then you get back to the microphone, you're like, and then you go and do a lead, and you come back, you're like, and so the stage was maybe, I don't know, like 10 or 12 feet high or something. We were in the second song of a 26-song set list. It was song number 2, and I went to go run towards one side of the stage to do a tasty lead, and I sort of tripped over this cable that was on the ground as I was running towards the lip of the stage. And I kind of did the thing where you're like rolling up the windows, like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll just kind of jump like a cat. I'll land on my feet. I'll just jump and I'll make it look graceful. So I kind of whoa'd and went over the lip of the stage, hit the ground so hard it made the loudest bang, so much that I heard all of the people in the front row go,
Oh.
and I was just mortified, like, God, what a dork, like, I can't even do this right. Oh my God, I've been doing it for 30 years. And I went to stand up, and as I put my weight on my right leg, there was just nothing there, and there was no pain.
No. Okay.
It was just that terrifying feeling of nothing being there. So I immediately sat down. The band has no idea that I'm injured because the stage is so high they can't even see me. I'm like in the security pit, and I look up at one of our security guys. I'm like, I broke my leg. I think I broke my leg.
Oh my God.
And so slowly the band stops playing and looks over the lip of the stage like, what is going on right now? And I said, someone give me a microphone. And there were already paramedics around me, and I just took this mic and I said, I think I broke my leg, so I'm going to go fix this, and we'll be back. Completely out of my mind.
Yeah.
And I looked at the band, and I'm like, just keep playing. Do a Queen cover, or I don't know, do a Rod Stewart song. And so they put me in this gurney and dragged me off to the side, and they pulled off my shoe, and I just saw my foot go to the right because I had dislocated my ankle, and I had broken is it the tibia, the bone that's kind of, it's down, like, it's either the tibia, the tibula, or something like that.
Right.
And so this guy looks at me. His name is Johan. This dude who was like the local paramedic, Swedish. He looks at me and he goes, your ankle's dislocated. I must put it in right now.
Oh.
And my wife Jordan comes running up like, oh my God. And I'm like, this is so embarrassing. And she was sitting next to me. She had on a leather jacket. And I put her leather jacket in my mouth and bit down as he put my ankle back in place. And
so
he said, your legs. I only felt the pressure. I didn't feel the pain. I was afraid of the pain, but it didn't come.
Okay.
And so he's sitting there holding my ankle, and this lady, I mean, I guess I was in shock, but I felt okay. And this lady comes up to me with one of those little aluminum blanket things you see on like Mount Everest. And she's like, are you cold? Do you need a blanket? I'm like, no, I don't need the blanket. I'm fine. And so the audience is just stunned. The band's playing a Rod Stewart song. I'm sitting there with this guy holding my ankle, and I was like, okay, well, if I sit in a chair, can I go finish the show? And he's like, well, if I let go of your ankle, it's going to fall out. And I said, well, then you're going to come on stage and hold my ankle while I play. And he goes, well, I need to put a brace on it. And I said, okay, do you have one? He said, no, it's at the hospital. We have to go there, put it on, then we can come back. And I said, how far is the hospital? He said, half an hour. I was like, no. You're going to hold it, and we're going to go up on stage. And so they wrapped this ace bandage around it really tightly. And then like 4 dudes carried me like Cleopatra back up to the stage on this chair. And then I sat down. And at that point, they were playing a Queen song, Under Pressure. And I came out on the chair, and the audience went, but it was the best show we've ever played. The audience went bananas. It was like a Rocky movie.
Right.
It was like, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so, and then halfway through the show, they had the plaster to make a cast. They pulled me off stage for 5 minutes, wrapped this plaster cast on, and then we finished the show. We were on stage for 2.5 hours, and then jumped in a car and went to the hospital, and they took an x-ray, and they're like, yeah, you need surgery.
Oh my God. But so you never stood back up on it, even when it was in a cast? Did you stay seated the whole time?
Well, I stayed seated until I got the cast on, and there was a point in the show where we have this like catwalk thing that goes out in the middle of the stadium, and I would go out there and play our song My Hero acoustic, and the whole audience sings along, and it's a really pretty magical moment in the stadium. So like a dum-dum, I'm like, give me the crutches, and I go crutch out the runway to the middle of the stage and do My Hero. And it's still no pain. I'm fine. I mean, at this point, we're all drinking champagne, like, woo-hoo! Like, this is the best show ever. And then, and then and then I went and sat down. We finished the show, and I went back to the hospital. And I went to the hospital. So by the time I got the X-ray, I was still okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when the lady looked at me and said, "You need surgery," that's when it started to hurt. That's when I realized, like, oh my God, I'm not 10 years old on a soccer field anymore.
Right.
Like I'm in my mid-40s, and this is going to leave a mark. Like this is going to suck.
Yeah.
So,
do you think though that walk on the catwalk, would that have made it worse at all, or it already was pretty bad?
Well, one thing I did eventually realize is that I learned a lot from this experience, not only physically but emotionally as well.
Yeah.
What I did realize is when you sustain an injury like that, the best idea is after your injury or surgery to make sure that you keep that limb elevated to avoid swelling, because with the swelling you can wind up with a lot of complications like infection and blah, blah, blah. And so I remember after my surgery, I was high as a kite. I had like a morphine clicker. I did the surgery in London. I had this great surgeon who does all the big soccer players and stuff. And so, I knew I was in good hands. But then the next day they said, okay, well, we're going to release you today, so we have to know if you can use crutches. And I'm like, oh, I've had crutches before. They're like, yeah, well, in England, they don't like to use the ones that go under your arms. They use the like Tiny Tim ones, the ones that go around your forearm. Those, because they think that the ones under your arms, apparently, they don't promote circulation and they're not great for you. I guess, I don't know, because you're just resting on them all the time. Anyway, so I get these Tiny Tim things, and they're like, they said, okay, so first sit up and let's make sure you don't faint. I'm like, okay. And they're like, listen, when you put your leg down over the bed, you're going to feel pain because all of the blood is going to rush to where your injury and the surgery has been. It's going to hurt. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I swear to God, I lifted my leg over the bed, and it felt like I put it into a fireplace. It was the most unimaginable pain I'd ever felt in my entire life. And then they give me the Tiny Tims, and they're like, okay, just walk to the door and back. I was like, oh my God. It was a nightmare. But no, in the beginning, I didn't know how to take care of my injury, and it took I learned a lot in the next 6 or 7 months of how to recover, for sure.
What was the surgery exactly? What did they do?
They had to put in a plate that would sort of connect the two bones. I had basically split the bone. And so they put in a plate. They screwed those in. They screwed the plate in. So I have maybe 3 or 4 screws that go from my ankle up my leg into the bone. And then there was also another band that was inserted in there to kind of hold the joint together. They had to stitch the ligaments back together where they were torn. And so I have hardware.
That's major. Yeah, so you still have screws in you.
I still do. Apparently you have the option to remove them, but as if I'm going to go back to the hospital and suffer another 4 months of physical therapy, my ass. If this thing's staying in, it's staying in, dude. I have tattoos I'm living with for the rest of my life. I might as well have a plate, too.
And it's okay to keep it in? Like, there's
apparently.
Okay.
So I've heard. Until there's any sort of, complication, then if it were an issue, it would be an issue. But, you've seen me since. I'm running around the stage like a madman like I used to. So whatever they did worked.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, if you feel like you have any long-term stuff, residual.
I got to be honest. The only thing I can't do, I can't sit crisscross applesauce anymore. That's the only thing. When I do, I get a really weird feeling in my leg. So story time. I gotta sit another way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess that's okay. I guess. Okay. Let me ask you this. Afterwards, you did some rehab, but you went back on tour. Like how much?
Yeah. Right? So basically, the craziest part of the story is that after I had the X-ray, they said, okay, you have to have surgery. You don't have to do it here, but you have to do it in the next 3 days. And I was like, okay. So everyone had their opinions. And at this point, everyone had had a bottle of champagne too. So Pat Smear's like, "We're good. We're not doing this in Sweden. We're going home. We're going to Los Angeles and doing it at theaters." And I'm like, "I'm not flying back to LA right now." And so we decided that we would go to London, and so I called a bunch of London friends and asked if anybody knew of a good doctor. I was referred to a doctor named James Calder, who is an amazing surgeon and has worked on athletes and people that have had injuries like this. And so I met with James Calder. He said, "Okay, we'll do the surgery tomorrow. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix this and this and this and this. If I see anything else, I'll fix that too. But you're fine. It'll be fine." I mean, he's like one of my life's greatest heroes. One of the things I learned in this experience was that doctors in England, you don't see them in the scrubs ever. They look like GQ models. Like, they wear suits and ties. So whenever you're sitting and meeting with them, I'm telling you, like, they look hot, right?
Oh.
And so I'm telling you, you actually met this guy, I'm sure. Like, he was at one of my birthday parties. At my 50th birthday party.
Oh, really?
He came all the way from England. Yeah, he's the best. He's like James Bond. He's amazing. Anyway, so what was I going to say? So then after surgery, he recommended me to a physical therapist and said, "Okay, this is the guy." A physical therapist named Dave Hancock, who also was a sports therapist but would work on musicians. I think at the time he was on tour with U2, working on U2. So I went to this U2 show to meet him. I think it was in Montreal or something. I went to this U2 show because, yes, we did continue to play shows with me sitting down. And I said, "Hey, I'm Dave. How are you?" He goes, "Hey, I'm Dave." I said, "Have you seen what's going on? Have you seen my case?" And he said, "Yeah." And the first thing he said, he goes, "It's a lot worse than you think it is." And I'm like, "That's not what I expected to or wanted to hear."
Right.
And he goes, "Look, if you do what I tell you to do, then you'll be running around and playing with your kids for the rest of your life. If you don't do what I tell you to do, you'll be walking with a cane. So it's your choice." He scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And it was right there and then that I realized how serious it was and how much work I had to do to get back.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Dave couldn't work with me because he was already with someone else. But he handed me to one of his physical therapists, an Irish former soccer player named Freddie Murray, who, as you know, is the ultimate man. He is the most handsome, charming, wonderful human being you've ever met in your life. Not to mention an incredible physical therapist that basically saved my life. And so we decided to continue touring because we still had 65 more shows on that tour. And we had the option to postpone or to cancel. And I'm like, "No way, dude. I got bills to pay. I'll sit down." And I designed this throne.
Yes.
Where I could sit there, and this thing's like shooting lasers and smoke machines, and it looks like Game of Thrones except guitar necks. And every day I would wake up and I'd go to Freddie's room. Freddie came on tour. Freddie had never been on tour with a rock band. We hazed him. We broke him in. But every morning I would wake up, I'd go to Freddie's room, and we would start physical therapy. And it was a good 2 or 3 hours. And then he would see me before the show, and he would see me after the show. And it was like that for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was intense, man. It was really, really intense.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, I spoke with Dr. Lou for this podcast. And then he also connected me with a soccer player named Kyle Beckerman. And one of the things that I talked about with both of them is about your attitude when you're recovering from something. And I was just thinking about how, like, there are a lot of people who probably would have just canceled or postponed. But, I mean, it's true. Do you think that helped you in your recovery in a sense that you had this to do? And, that goes a lot toward your attitude.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things. First of all, it kind of begins what with what this band represents to me, right? When the Foo Fighters started, I had nothing. After Nirvana was over, I didn't even want to listen to music, much less play in another band. And so months and months went by where I couldn't even touch an instrument. And then I realized that it was music that was going to heal me, my broken heart from losing Kurt and losing Nirvana. Music had always been that to me. And it was my life's greatest love. And going without it for so long, I think, made me sick. And then I realized, okay, this is what's going to heal me. And so starting the Foo Fighters really did represent some sort of healing and survival to me. This is how I'm going to survive. This is how I'm going to keep the ball rolling. This is my continuation of life. So that's kind of the foundation of everything. Mm-hmm. Then there's also having something to live for, or something to look forward to, or something to challenge yourself. And I've always kind of been that person too, to do things that I don't know if I can do, and to prove to myself that I can do them. So when I was sitting on the side of the stage with a broken leg, I was like, okay, I need to see if I can do this. I'm not giving up. I'm going to try to do this right now.
Yeah.
And so then with the physical therapy, what I realized was a lot of it, I know that it's physical, but so much of it has to do with your state of mind, mm-hmm. your attitude. And, every day I would wake up and I would have dreams of running, dreams of dancing, dreams of slow-mo in a field of poppies jumping and then I'd wake up with a broken leg, oh my God. And so that was some sort of motivation, oh my God, I have to get it back. I just have to do it. Not to mention, as a drummer, I mean, this is my kick drum foot. Oh. And that's my bread and butter, baby. It's I cannot lose this thing. Anyway, but yes, a lot of it had to do with my attitude. And another thing I realized, when you wind up with an injury like that, it really tests your vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And this might sound strange, but as a man, that's a very fragile piece of your construct,
Yeah.
Every man's Superman. Nobody likes to admit this vulnerability. As you get older and you kind of have to surrender to this physical vulnerability, it can really test your emotions.
Uh-huh.
And that was a huge, huge part of it. And the only way out is up. So I looked at it as a challenge. I looked at it as something I needed to do to repair myself, both physically and emotionally.
Yeah.
And that first conversation with Dave Hancock, where he said, "Do you want to run around playing with your kids, or do you want to walk on a cane?" That was another big one, and it worked. It really worked.
Yeah, that I can imagine. That is scary. So moving forward from that, are you more conscious of risks? Do you have any kind of PTSD? I mean, I know you're.
Well, first of all, you know me.
Well,
am I more cautious with risk? I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
how about running around? That one? Well, I'll tell you this.
Okay.
Now there is day glow duct tape all over the stage, just to say Dave, no. I mean, for the longest time, there were jokes oh, we should put you on one of those harnesses that you tether a kid at a playground to the swing set, whatever. Yes, or oh, we could just fill the security pit with packing peanuts or whatever. But of course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You're talking about being in a rock band.
Yeah.
Okay. It's an unusual job because you definitely have this stunted state of emotional growth. When you start playing rock and roll, you're 16 again, and you feel 16 again. I don't feel 52 when I'm on stage. I feel like a kid in the mirror with a tennis racket. I still do. Right.
Right.
But of course, yes. I mean, I now realize the consequence of going over the falls and like hitting one of those security pits
Yeah.
really hard. But no, and then I I think that as you get older, I also imagine that my recovery would be that of a 16-year-old,
Right.
and it's just not anymore.
Right.
It just doesn't work like that anymore.
Right.
So I realize this now.
Yeah.
Am I more careful? Yes. Like, did I quit hoverboarding? Yes. You know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
certain things
Right.
that I kind of decided to take out or off the bucket list.
Yeah, that's
So,
what I was going to ask you. Like your physical regimen. Now, what about like on the other side of it? Are there things you do to take better care of yourself physically now?
no. Well, I mean, no, there really aren't. I don't think so. I mean, I'm not necessarily athletically inclined, although I am. Like when I was young, I was a total like hyperactive jock kid. I played soccer, I played lacrosse. I was always the goalie because they're like, he's crazy, put him in the goal. So I was that guy. And then I discovered music and kind of let that sort of
Right.
go away. But I remember when I was maybe about, I guess it was when I was turning 40. Taylor, our drummer, he said, look, you're getting old and you're going to get fat. So here's what you have to do. I'm going to buy you a mountain bike and you're going to learn to mountain bike.
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
remember when
okay.
you were doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did it for a while until I realized like, okay, I'm that kind of hyperactive freak that I'll wind up like breaking my collarbone on this thing. I'm like, I probably shouldn't do that. Even tennis. I started playing tennis again.
Yeah.
I played when I was a kid. Started playing tennis again, like, I don't know, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I run around like I'm not a very competitive person. I'm not like, and so when I'm on a tennis court, I'm not necessarily there to win. I'm kind of there just to hit the thing as hard as I can and make everyone laugh. It's basically the same as the Foo Fighters. And then of course I sprained my wrist and I wind up tearing my bicep and I have to have surgery for that and blah blah blah. So I've kind of found that my best exercise is just like rocking for 3 hours in a stadium.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I roll.
That is pretty athletic. I mean,
Oh my God, you have no idea. Listen,
yeah.
it's one thing if you're going to stand around like, Burt Bacharach with a microphone in your hand. It's another if you're screaming bloody murder, running 100 yards at a time for 3 hours in a row. It actually is really, really good exercise.
Yeah.
Like imagine screaming the national anthem for 3 hours while you're doing sit-ups and drinking a beer every half an hour. That's what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So it hasn't slowed you down. That's encouraging. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And you're good.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel like at my age,
Yeah.
but I feel pretty good.
But who does?
You
Right?
know?
Yeah.
And like I don't, when I was young, I was super insecure. I was like, my legs are so skinny and I've got big nostrils and huge teeth. And I've finally grown into this place where I'm like,
Yeah.
I look kind of cool. Like I'm getting old. I got gray hairs. My teeth are all chipped from microphones and I got a bald spot. Like, kick ass. I'm like the next Neil Young. This is great.
It is. That's awesome. Right? And you have the scars to prove it.
Got some scars to prove it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. I love that. You always have a good attitude. Although I do remember I was with you that summer after you broke your leg. We were in Rehoboth and you were like having to put your leg in that ice machine. You were a little grumpy. I remember.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, I remember on that trip, that was the first time I took a shower. I was taking baths before. It's not the first time I bathed. It's the first time I took a shower. And that was huge for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, also, while we were out there doing our touring, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh God, still broken. Ugh. And then I would scoot out of bed on my butt across a hotel floor, start a bath, get myself into the bath, redress the stitches or whatever I had to do, scoot back, brush my teeth, as I'm trying to stand up next to the sink, pack my little toiletry case, put it on my stomach, scoot back on my butt to to my suitcase that's on the floor, put on my socks, get dressed and stuff like that, and then look around, find like a stray sock under the bed, scoot my butt over there, get that, like pack my bag, get my little knee scooter thing, and like try to drag my back while I'm on the knee scooter down to the lobby to get on the bus, like crutch up into the bus, sit there, have to do physical therapy on the bus, get backstage, more physical therapy. I'm doing that like electroshock therapy, whatever that stuff is. I can't remember what they're called. Those little things you put on your
those
things.
electrodes or whatever.
Electrocurrent stuff.
Yeah.
Do that, shock the crap out of myself, crutch into the backstage, sit there with my leg up, ice it, and someone would literally carry me to the stage, put me on the throne thing. I would play for 3 hours. They would pick me up and like carry me back to the dressing room where I do more physical therapy. So I was already like 2 months into that when we got to Rehoboth.
It's exhausting.
It was hard. Like there were times where I was just like, oh God, like it was definitely hard, but I never gave up. I just thought, okay, if I can get through this, then I'll be the best break dancer you've ever seen in your entire life. Also, one of my life dreams is to become a tap dancer. And so even that was threatened by this ridiculous accident.
Okay, that's something I'd like to see. I hope that's next on
Tap
your list.
I have the shoes, and I feel like I'm capable of doing it because I understand the patterns.
Yeah.
And you've seen me dance. I'm hot on the floor.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, you've got moves.
Dude.
You have moves.
You don't have to sell it to me, baby. I already got it.
Okay, I hope to see that next. I mean, I know you have a lot on your plate, but I hope you add tap dancing.
I mean, it's something to look forward to.
I'm here for that.
I would have dreams of tap dancing and wake up to a broken leg.
So just fulfilling that long lost wish. I am here for that.
Someday.
I'm here for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I think that's awesome, and I really think that you're, talking about having a good attitude and all that goes a long way, and I think a lot of people can get a lot out of that, for sure.
Well, I think just in general in life that it's important to carry some sense of hope with yourself, within yourself, all the time, like even on the worst days.
Yeah.
On bad days, there's times where you're sort of locked in a crisis and it's hard to imagine being outside of it.
Yeah.
But if you remind yourself of a much bigger picture, that's kind of what I try to do every day. And, you can apply that sort of hope to so many different things. And when it comes to recovery, I think it's really important to have this positive energy, the positive attitude, and a sense of hope. And also Dr. Lou with the shofar. I don't know if you know, but it was when I first... Oh, you know about the shofar?
Yes, because when Kendall had her surgery, I got a video of it. So...
Yeah. Well, yeah, he did the same thing to me. And that was that was upon our first meeting. My surgeon said, you got to meet this guy, Dr. Lou Schoen. He's going to come to your show in D.C. I was sitting with my mother. Lou comes in, bow tie, glasses, the whole thing. And he goes, okay, let's check out what's going on. How you doing? And I tell him, like a 3-minute thing. Okay, all right, well, sounds like you're doing okay. If you have any trouble, just let me know. But what I usually do for most of my parents is I blow a shofar just to, promote healing. And I'm like, I had no idea what this was at all. And neither did my mother. And he's like, and I was just like, what? Like, you're the badass doctor in Baltimore? Then it turns out he is.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
And I have to imagine that this worked. I mean, listen, I don't know if it's, recorded in any medical journals, but dude, when that shofar starts going, I felt pretty good.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? Yeah.
Some people take Advil. Some people get acupuncture. Some people get a shofar in their face. It works.
Why not? Maybe there's something to that. Maybe that'll be our next podcast.
Next podcast.
That's right.
Power of the shofar.
Power of the shofar. There are a couple of big things I got out of this conversation, and I hope you will agree. The first, Dave really is flippin' awesome, right? Second, something for us all to remember: a positive outlook in any tough situation, a physical injury, emotional trauma, whatever it really is key to healing and to survival. One thing we try to touch on in all of our episodes on any health topic is the mind-body connection, how your mental state and your physical condition are so linked together. From talking to Dave, it also seems really important to find that thing that brings you joy, because that's the thing that will get you through. For Dave, it's music, and I'm so glad he's had that and that he still has that now. I'm also so grateful to him for doing this interview with me, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to download Your Body Show for more great content and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to learn more, visit yourbodyshow.com or check out our social pages on Instagram and Facebook. Search for Radnet California. Your Body is produced by Steve Kramer, Doug Smith, and me, Stephanie Landon. Joseph Wilson is head of technical production. Executive produced by Paul Colacchio and Karen Morad, all on behalf of Radnet. Original theme music by Mark Lakier. We hope you've enjoyed our HealthCast. Find us wherever you download podcasts.